Ukraine isn't the only country humiliating Russia and its president Vladimir Putin. India too just got in on the act, turning down a Kremlin deal to buy one of Russia's most advanced jets, the Su-57. It's supposed to be the most advanced jet in the Russian Air Force, but in India's view, it's little more than a broken buggy, and unproven aircraft that can't compete with New Delhi's own fifth-generation fighter, the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, AMCA. This is a blow for the Kremlin. With the Russian economy in an increasingly precarious position, Putin needs to do as many deals as he can with the countries that are still willing to trade with Russia. It's one of the only ways he can keep money flowing into the country to continue funding the extortionately expensive invasion of Ukraine. He's already facing off against an unprecedented fuel crisis and crippled oil production capacity, thanks to Ukraine's repeated deep drone strikes on Russia's oil infrastructure, as well as the ever-worsening effects of Western sanctions imposed by countries like the United States and members of the European Union. While some funds are still flowing into Russia, largely thanks to India and China, who have become the largest buyers of Russia's oil since the war began, the Kremlin's economy is far weaker than it was just a few years ago. It's also incredibly oriented around the military-industrial complex, with Putin recently committing up to 40% of the state budget for the next few years purely for defense and law enforcement spending. With so much money tied up in military matters, the Kremlin will be banking on selling some of its latest and greatest military innovations, like fighter jets, missiles, and air defense systems, to various interested parties around the globe. There's just one problem. Those countries, just like the rest of the world, have been keeping a close eye on events in Ukraine. They've seen how the supposedly mighty Russian war machine has somehow struggled so badly to defeat a significantly smaller opponent. They've watched as Russia has suffered incalculable losses, with more than 1 million casualties and tens of thousands of tanks, vehicles, vessels, aircraft, air defense systems, and other military assets either damaged or destroyed. They've witnessed how the Kremlin's forces, despite their so-called world-beating, industry-leading missiles, drones, and other armaments, have been utterly incapable of capturing a single Ukrainian city since 2022. And they've heard the stories of Russia's allegedly high-end air defenses being blown to bits by cheap drones, tanks and armored vehicles proving useless in urban conditions, artillery systems failing to fire, jets being blown out of the skies, and radars failing to detect incoming missiles until it's too late. As a result, impressions of Russia have drastically changed. Many countries once saw Russia as one of the biggest and best military superpowers on the planet, and would have eagerly invested in any pieces of the Kremlin's arsenal that they could afford. Now, having read the headlines and seen the news reports of failure after failure and loss after loss, those same nations are starting to wonder if it's really worth investing in Russian assets after all. India is chief among them. For reference, India ranks among the countries that spend the most on their militaries each year, and it has, in recent times, made great strides to modernize its armed forces and expand investment in exciting new innovations and domestic technologies. It has also, historically, been one of the biggest buyers of Russian and Soviet arms on the planet. This all started decades ago, in the 1960s, when India began to buy large amounts of military hardware from the Soviet Union. Around that same time, Western nations like the US and UK were supplying large amounts of arms to Pakistan, and India found that the Soviet Union was willing to offer it a great deal of political support, advanced technologies, and reasonable prices for the hardware it needed to improve its offensive and defensive capabilities. Thus, a strong relationship developed between the two nations, and India bought up a number of Soviet and then Russian vehicles, aircraft, vessels, and weaponry. Some examples include fighter jets like the MiG-21, MiG-23 and Su-30 MKI, Il-76 transport aircraft, Il-78 tankers, Mi-17 series helicopters, T-72 and T-90 main battle tanks, BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles, Smerch rocket systems, Kilo-class submarines, Talwar-class frigates, and the S-400 air defense system. Because of this, for a number of years, estimates suggest that anywhere from 65 to 85% of all of India's military equipment was of either Russian or Soviet origin, which shows just how dependent India has been on Moscow over the decades. The two countries have also collaborated on various military projects over the years, like the BrahMos missile, for example, otherwise known as the PJ-10. This long-range ramjet-powered supersonic cruise missile entered service with the Indian Armed Forces in 2007, and has the capacity to be launched from ships, fighter jets, submarines, or Transporter Erector Launcher (TEL) vehicles. It was the result of the combined efforts of India's Defence Research and Development Organisation (DRDO) and a Russian rocket design bureau named MPO Mashinostroyenia. Russia and India also joined forces to create a new kind of AK rifle for use in the Indian Armed Forces, the AK-203. For a while, the two countries were also working together on a fighter program entitled the Russian-Indian Fifth-Generation Fighter Aircraft (FGFA) program. The idea behind this was to create a new fifth-generation fighter for the Indian Air Force that was based on Russia's own Sukhoi Su-57. Reportedly, the final design was set to boast more than 40 improvements over the original Su-57, including more advanced sensors, superior networking technologies, and improved combat avionics as well. The Indian jet would have been a two-seater model, with one place for the pilot and another for either a co-pilot or weapons systems operator, and the two countries agreed to work together back in 2007, soon after the success of their BrahMos collaboration. However, this project did not go anywhere near as smoothly or successfully as BrahMos. There were numerous project changes and delays recorded throughout the 2010s, and Russia also reported major cost overruns as well. And by 2017, the future of this fifth-gen fighter was looking bleaker than ever, with the Indian Air Force claiming that the high maintenance costs involved were making it reluctant to proceed any further. India was also beginning to put new plans in place to make its own separate fifth-generation jet to keep pace with China, which rolled out its Chengdu J-20 that same year. On April the 20th, 2018, the inevitable occurred, with reports revealing that India had officially given up on the project. Officials stated that they were simply sick and tired of the slow progress and numerous delays they'd experienced up to that point, as well as difficulties negotiating and dealing with the Russian contractors. They went on to say they were not satisfied with the capabilities of the Su-57 itself, which was supposed to be the bedrock of the entire project, and while they didn't rule out the prospect of recommencing work on the project sometime down the line, they evidently had little interest in taking it any further at that stage. That was a major moment for military cooperation and trade between India and Russia. It was also the start of a gradual but now increasingly prominent shift from New Delhi as it moves away from Moscow and focuses more on its Make in India initiative, which is all about domestic design, development and manufacturing of defence equipment to power the Indian Armed Forces and export to other nations around the globe. In short, India wants to go from being a buyer to a seller, making its own hardware and becoming less dependent on other nations, especially Russia, which has proven to be so volatile and unpredictable in recent years. But Russia hasn't simply allowed India to walk away from the fifth-gen fighter jet program. Moscow has repeatedly and persistently reached out to New Delhi, making offer after offer in a bid to win back India's custom and investment, and its offers have become increasingly desperate over time. Back in June of this year, for example, reports emerged of Russia offering a truly jaw-dropping deal to India: complete uncensored source code access to the Su-57E stealth fighter. That would have allowed India's military engineers and development teams to study this stealth jet at the deepest possible level, learning valuable lessons from its core code and then embedding their own homegrown avionics, sensors and other electronics into the Su-57 framework. It would also have given India the freedom and flexibility to integrate the likes of its Astra Mark I and Mark II air-to-air missiles into the jet, as well as other domestic armaments like the Rudram anti-radiation missiles. Many military experts agreed that this was an unprecedented offer, and it also showed just how desperate Russia was to get some sort of deal done with New Delhi, with one senior Indian defense official admitting, "No Western partner has ever allowed us this level of autonomy." But the days went by and no official deal was formally announced between the two countries. So Russia went one step further. In July, fresh reports revealed that Moscow was now offering a package deal, including the Su-35M as well as the Su-57E in a 2-for-1 bundle. It was believed that this was a last-ditch attempt by Moscow to secure a long-term contract with the Indian Air Force, and Moscow claimed that it would both provide short- and long-term benefits for New Delhi. In the short term, India would be able to instantly add the Su-35M to its Air Force arsenal, and since the Su-35 has much in common with the Su-30, which India's pilots had already been using for quite some time, it would have been quite a smooth and simple transition. In the long term, India could begin serial production of the Su-57E at the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited plant in Nashik, a city in the western part of the country. Russian defense conglomerate Rostec and aircraft manufacturer Sukhoi proposed the deal, and Rostec also attempted to sweeten the pot by offering India the possibility to eventually receive additional engine upgrades that would deliver superior stealth characteristics and extended lifespan to the Su-57 in the future. Despite the size and generosity of this offer, India showed no signs of immediately accepting it, and many experts wondered about New Delhi's increasing reluctance to work with Moscow and invest in Kremlin defenses, especially in the wake of rising sanctions against Russia. Now it appears that a final decision may have been made, and it's not the one that the Kremlin had been hoping for. On November the 19th, a report from the Indian Defence Research Wing, IDRW, revealed that Russia had made yet another improved offer regarding the Su-57 fighter jet. According to that report, the Kremlin has offered an enormous deal, set to include the transfer of numerous technologies and the approval for India to begin serial production of Su-57s on its own territory. Russia has reportedly also offered India the option to use some of the technologies from the Su-57 to inform and enhance the design of its own fifth-generation fighter, the AMCA. And on top of all of that, Moscow has also thrown in its fifth-generation 177S turbojet engine. Designed by Russia's United Engine Corporation specifically to power aircraft like the Su-57E, this powerful engine boasts a strong service life of up to 6,000 hours, as well as the ability to generate enormous amounts of thrust without expending as much fuel as similar engines. It boasts numerous other impressive technical specifications and unique benefits, like its stealth-optimized nozzles that help to keep infrared signatures to a minimum. The 177S engine is a valuable addition to this deal, especially for India, as New Delhi has had troubles when it comes to jet engine development. It's been working on its own GTRE GTX 35VS cavalry engine for literally decades now, and it's still not ready to be rolled out for operational use, with some experts estimating the cavalry program still has 10 to 12 more years before it will finally be complete. As such, offering India a ready-made stealth jet engine does appear to be a shrewd move from Moscow's negotiators, but it still might not be enough. On its X account, the IDRW, the same outlet that revealed the full details of the latest Russian offer, argued that it still did not represent good value as far as India was concerned. Russia still wants Indians to believe the Su-57 technology transfer will benefit the AMCA program, but that's no longer realistic. AMCA is set to surpass the Su-57 in avionics and weapon systems by a wide margin. The only area where the Su-57 will retain an edge is in sheer weapons carrying capacity. Russia is hoping that India will agree to this deal on the basis that its engineers, designers and development teams could learn a lot from the Su-57 and use that information to perfect the AMCA, which is still in development and not set to even enter serial production until 2035. However, as the IDRW's post notes, India may not actually learn all that much from studying the Su-57 any deeper or acquiring Russia's latest and greatest technologies, as its AMCA is, at least in theory, destined to be a far superior jet in almost every major metric. While there's still plenty of work to be done on the AMCA, India has extremely high hopes for this project. Designed for a mixture of roles, including air superiority, electronic warfare, ground strikes, and suppression of enemy air defenses, it's said to incorporate cutting-edge features, including AI-assisted electronic pilot or e-pilot, technologies, integrated vehicle health management systems, and advanced networking communications. As far as performance goes, according to the latest available data, the AMCA projected peak speed is Mach 2.15, or around 1,650 miles per hour. It has a projected combat range of around 1,000 miles, 1,620 kilometers, and will be powered by two GE F414 engines, with a maximum internal payload of up to 3,300 pounds, or 1,500 kilograms, and an external payload of around 15,400 pounds, 7,000 kilograms. The AMCA will also, upon completion, boast of advanced stealth capabilities, avionics, and agility. Its design will feature radar-absorbing materials, internal weapons bays to minimize its radar cross-section, indigenous AESA radar integration, and AI-assisted sensor fusion, and it will have both supercruise and supermaneuverability capacities, enabling it to sustain supersonic flight speeds without the need for afterburners and carry out complex aerial maneuvers with the aid of its thrust-vectoring engines. Once this jet is complete, it should be able to fly faster and further than the Su-57, while also bringing superior stealth technologies to the table and numerous other advanced features too. The Su-57, of course, has the benefit of already being complete and operational, but it can still hardly be classed as combat-proven. Over the course of the more than 3-year war with Ukraine, Russia has barely used these jets at all. They have been seen only on rare, sporadic occasions, with a few vague Russian reports of them being used in the early stages of the war, followed by a brief spate of confirmed sightings over the course of 2024. If these jets are as good as Putin and other Russian officials say they are, it stands to reason that the Kremlin's commanders would want to use them as much as possible to inflict maximum damage to Ukraine's air defences and other important assets. Yet, they haven't. There are a couple of potential explanations for that. One is simply that since these jets are still so new, Russia still reportedly doesn't have a very large number of operational units, so has been unable to field too many Su-57s in the skies above Ukraine. The other reason, however, and the one that many experts feel is the most accurate and likely explanation, is that Russia's commanders are worried about the potential humiliation and reputational damage they would suffer if they send Su-57s out to attack Ukraine and some of them get destroyed in the process. Given how effective Ukraine's air defences are when it comes to taking out Russia's drones, missiles and aircraft, it's highly likely that Kyiv's missile systems would also find a way to bring down the Kremlin's fancy new fighters too. That in turn would make it much harder for Moscow to convince countries like India to actually invest in them. What's more, the Su-57 hasn't exactly had the best start to its operational life. Reports have revealed that many of the initial units delivered to the Russian Air Force are substandard prototypes or pre-production aircraft with older and weaker engines, while leaked Russian documents also stated that many of Russia's existing Su-57s are, essentially, incomplete, lacking several critical components, including a cooling system, AESA antenna reception modules, and the 101 KSN electro-optical targeting pod, which helps provide all-weather surveillance, critical radar capabilities, and infrared detection. In addition, there have been several documented cases of random technical failures and accidents involving the Su-57 in its brief existence so far, like in December 2019, when the first serial Su-57 actually crashed during its final round of factory trials due to a random fault in the control system. When Russia's fanciest and most advanced equipment is as broken, buggy, and unreliable as that, it's no wonder that India appears increasingly uninterested in any further investments or acquisitions. And it's not the only country turning away from the Russian military hardware. Indeed, at the recent Dubai Airshow 2025 event, Rostec CEO Sergei Chesimov admitted that Russia's arms exports have completely collapsed, dropping by half compared to their pre-war 2022 levels. In reality, the numbers may be even worse than the CEO wants to admit, as third-party research from the Jamestown Foundation states that Russia sold just $1 billion worth of arms in 2024, which is a 92% decrease compared to 2021. SIPRI data shows a similarly dramatic decline of 64% in the last 5 years, clearly highlighting how so many countries have all but given up on Russia as a major military supplier, taking their business elsewhere and leaving the Kremlin with far fewer investors and ever-increasing economic problems. You can learn more about how the United States just made those economic problems 10 times worse in this video, which looks at the latest round of sanctions imposed by America on Russia and its few remaining allies. Or for an in-depth look at another of the Kremlin's many crises, check out this video, which details how Russia is starting to run out of tanks far faster than it can afford to make new ones. To see more videos like this and stay informed and up to date on all the latest breaking news from the Russia-Ukraine war, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications today.